you can just get your mind together, then come on across.
Thank you for joining us this evening on The Experience. Coming up, we're going to tell you how Godzilla is invading Worcester. Also, we've got Bruce Tretter back. He's got another of his e-books out, and also, it's going to be a cleanup day in Westboro. We'll tell you about that. But right now, an exciting find at the Franklin Lodge of the Masons. And here to tell us about it, we've got Bob. You're actually associated with the Morning Star Lodge here in Worcester, but oversee a number of lodges here in central Massachusetts. Stephen is here from the Franklin Lodge, as is Matt, who is... Now, what's your title for the...
I'm Master of Franklin Lodge.
Master of the Franklin Lodge. So
yes.
You're in charge of it all?
Yes.
All right. But Stephen, did you actually find these two aprons, this historic find at the Franklin Lodge?
Yes, I did.
All right. Tell me a little bit about this and why this is a historic find and something that's exciting.
Well, it was in the back hallway of our lodge. It was on the list of things for us to do around there, just to clean it out and remove some of the trash that had accumulated over the years and stuff that no longer is needed and whatnot. So I had some free time one day. I went over, opened up the back door, and just started making trips back and forth to the dumpster, just getting rid of the trash and whatnot. And tucked away up against the far wall was what I had thought originally was just half of a window, just a casement window. As I got closer to it and I finally was able to pull it out, I noticed it was a display case. So I brought it into the downstairs hall. I laid it out on our pool table, turned the lights on in the hall, came back to it, and inside this case was two aprons and sashes that were deemed marks from the early 1800s.
No kidding. Wow.
One of the brothers was raised in 1803, the other 1820, and that brother being listed as a charter member of Franklin Lodge, which was constituted March 10th, 1852.
Wow. So, Matt, this really is a historic find. I mean, going all the way back to the beginnings of the Franklin Lodge. And any idea how long that they may have just been sitting back there in this display case until Steve found them?
It's almost impossible to tell. As
You've
soon
been
as the
putting
lodge
down
moved to the building.
Yeah, for years you've been saying clean out the back. He'd been saying to do that, and finally, Steve, after all these years, it finally came to pass. Now, Bob, I mean, as a significant find for the Masons, what does it mean to the Masons to have this?
Well, it probably means more to the individual lodge than it does overall to the Masonic structure in general. Masonic structure is full of history. It is history that's usually maintained through our Grand Lodge, which is in Boston, on Tremont Street in Boston. They maintain most of the history and most of the records that go back to the beginning of the Grand Lodge, which was in 1733. Making it the third oldest Grand Lodge in the world. Yeah. So it's very significant to the lodge themselves. It takes them right back, takes all the current brothers right back and put them into, a time, and they can imagine the time way back in the early 1800s and kind of imagine what it was like and so on to be raised at that time as a Mason. So it's more significant.
But it really does show the roots of the organization, and the deep roots here in America as well, and even some ties. Is this right, Stephen, to the American Revolution, in that Paul Revere is tied a little bit to these aprons?
Actually, both of these brothers were original members of Olive Branch Lodge, which is located in Millbury. And that lodge, I believe, was instituted in 1735, 34, 35, somewhere around that
frame. Back a few years. There's nobody out there who's going to correct you.
But it was under Paul Revere. Yeah. He was the Grand Master at the time.
It was the Grand Master. Wow. Wow. I mean, so, Matt, really, you follow in some very historic footsteps. That must be one of the exciting things about being a Freemason, is this real ties to the beginnings of American art history.
Yes, that's correct. That's probably one of the key elements to Masonry, is that we have such deep-seated roots and we have such a historical foundation in both this state and the country.
Huh. Bob, I think most of us probably who are not Masons are familiar with it from the sort of ever-present commercials that have been running for the last several years about, ask a Mason, ask a Freemason.
And Ben Franklin.
And Ben Franklin comes on, and when Ben Franklin is speaking to you, you kind of sit up and listen.
There are a lot more prominent men that were Masons. George Washington was a Mason. He set the cornerstone for the Capitol building. He was inaugurated in his Masonic apron. If you look closely at some of the pictures of his inauguration, he's there in his apron. So it was very significant in their lives as well. And many of the original architects of this country were Freemasons. Rumors has, if you take some of the tours in Boston, they will tell you that there was a lodge opened one evening back in the 1700s, and the lodge was never closed. And that same night, there was a band of Indians that raided a ship and threw tea into the harbor. So they don't make the connection directly, but they imply that potentially there were Freemasons involved in that.
Absolutely.
So.
Now, when we're talking about the aprons that you found, Steve, are they much like what we are looking at that you're wearing today?
No, they're not.
Okay.
I mean, they're much more elaborate. The artwork is incredible. To what significance they have, not quite sure yet. I haven't researched that far back yet. I'm in contact with the National Heritage Museum out of Lexington as well to try to look at the significance and what the artwork details.
Are you also trying to find some of the descendants, some of the people who would have ties to the original Masons who would have worn these aprons?
That is the hope. Once the aprons come back from the textile conservator, hope to have an unveiling and a rededication. So it would be ideal if we could have some of the living descendants there as well during the public unveiling.
Boy, that's terrific. Matt, I mean, you would obviously help in putting all of that together. What do you sort of envision?
Well, we're looking at actually having a whole day at the lodge where we have an unveiling of the aprons. We'll have them in a display case. I'd like to have some of the relatives there, you know, to just say, okay, this is part of the history. This belonged to your great-great-great-grandfather, whoever it might be, and, you know, just make a whole day of it at the lodge. So we're looking for people who may know anything about the families, about the individuals themselves, you know, that could come to the lodge or contact us and make this happen.
Yeah.
You know?
So you're still in the process of that. If there's anybody out there who knows anything about that, they should contact you directly at the lodge. Bob, do you find that there is more of an interest in being a Mason now than maybe at any time in the last 10 or 20 years? And I guess that I'm thinking about the way it's kind of gotten into our pop culture right now, whether it's the Da Vinci Code or National Treasure. And I don't know if that helps or hurts, or if you have to dissuade some people who come through the door thinking that they're going to go on, you know, a great adventure across America finding different things. But
well, I'm a relatively new Mason. I've only been a Mason for 9 years, and compared to some of the guys, that's new. But when I first came in 9 years ago, there was not much said about Masonry. It was kind of a secret as to who was a Mason. You had to find a Mason and ask them to join. About 5 years ago, 3 Grand Masters ago, he opened it up so that you could go up and approach a good man and ask him if he would consider becoming a Mason. At the same time, he was also a car dealer, and that opened up the idea of, well, let's advertise. And that's when the advertisements began, and open houses that we run once a year. Every fall we run an open house and bring people in just to look around and talk to people and see if it's for them.
And then what happens, Matt? Somebody comes into the Franklin Lodge in Grafton, they come to maybe one of the open houses, and then do you extend them an invitation?
Absolutely. What we do is we actually have some forms if they wish to become a Mason. Then we have forms that they can fill out. Then we get in contact with them. We do an investigation where we go to their house, and, you know, we just sit and we talk just like we are now. And, you know, 3 of us go. We deem them worthy, and then we move the process on from there. So,
Steve, how many years for you as a Mason?
Well, out of this group, I am the newest. I've only been in for about 2.5 years now.
And you have this historic find. Your place in the lore is assured. How about for you, Matt?
I joined in 2006, so this makes it my 5th year.
I see. But as you were saying, Bob, there's those who, I mean, you go back generations, I'm sure.
Generations. Part of my job is to award Grand Lodge designed awards. One of the major ones that we present in the lodges is a 50-year Veterans Medal, and we have a significant number of 50-year veterans that we'll be presenting this year. As a matter of fact, next week we're presenting at Matt's and Steve's lodge some of their 50-year members. So
fantastic.
People have been in for an awful long time. Some of them are no longer able to come to lodge.
Right.
So those will try to visit when they're homes, but many of them still come to lodge
This is
in
terrific.
their 90s.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I know. I think
It's
that,
amazing.
that's wonderful. Hey, thank you all so much for coming by, for telling us about this historic find, Steve. Congratulations to you on that.
Thank you for having us.
Look forward to the day out at the lodge at Franklin Lodge. It's going to be a wonderful day. Bob, thank you and all of you again for coming by and telling us about Freemasons.
Well, thank you for
Thank you
having
very
us.
much.
And if anybody out there does have any information on either Royal Leland or Amasa Roberts, these are the two brothers who were in possession of these aprons, just contact me at seniorstewart@franklinlodge.org.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Much more to come straight ahead right here on the Hank Stolz Experience.